Okay, so when you think of ancient Greece, your mind probably jumps to Athens, maybe Socrates, marble temples, that sort of thing.
Right, the classical period.
Exactly. But today we're going way, way back, about 500 years earlier into what's called the Late Bronze Age.
We're talking roughly 1600 to 1100 BC on the Greek mainland, and we are looking at the Mycenaeans.
And if classical Greece was about philosophy, the Mycenaeans were really about one thing.
Strength. Pure and simple. Their entire society was built around a powerful ruler, a warrior king, living inside a massive fortified palace.
So this wasn't just a culture prepared for war.
No, their whole structure, their architecture, their economy, everything was basically a monument to protection and dominance.
And the first clue is just where they decided to build their cities. You won't find them in nice, flat, open valleys.
Absolutely not. They built on high, strategic hills. It gave them this perfect, natural view of everything around them.
Like ancient surveillance.
Pretty much. A guard up there could spot an army, or even just a few raiders from miles away.
And the land itself was a kind of defense, right? The terrain was often really rugged, steep cliffs.
Which means any army trying to charge the walls would be exhausted before they even got there.
But building up high wasn't just practical.
No, it was also a massive status symbol. If you're a farmer down in the valley, you look up every single day and see that fortress just looming over you.
It's a constant reminder of who's in charge.
Exactly. It visually cements the king's power.
Okay, so let's talk about those walls because they are just incredible.
They're not just simple brick walls. We're talking about massive fortifications made of huge limestone blocks.
And some of these blocks weighed several tons. How in the world did they move them?
Well, that's one of the great engineering mysteries. The technique is called Cyclopean masonry.
Cyclopean.
Yeah, because later Greeks, centuries later, looked at these walls and thought, no normal human could have lifted these rocks.
So they came up with a myth.
They figured it must have been the Cyclops, the mythical one-eyed giants. That's the only explanation they could think of. The stones are fitted so tightly you don't even need mortar.
And these walls were thick, like really thick.
Oh, yeah. Often over 20 feet thick.
20 feet. To give you some perspective, that's like parking two big SUVs end to end. That's the thickness of the wall.
And you need that kind of thickness to resist things like battering rams. It tells you they were living in a time of serious, constant conflict.
And the main entrance at Mycenaean, the Lion Gate. It's the ultimate don't mess with us sign.
It really is. It's both a security checkpoint and a piece of propaganda. You've got this huge triangular stone carving over the top.
With the two lions.
Right. Two lions standing on their hind legs on either side of a pillar. And they aren't just for decoration.
Really symbolize
the strength of the royal family. And crucially, that they had divine protection. So any visitor, a trader, an enemy diplomat walking through that gate got an immediate, very clear message. Overwhelming power. It's also one of the oldest monumental sculptures in all of Europe.
So you make it past the Lion Gate, past the 20-foot walls, and you get to the heart of the palace.
And the heart of the whole society. It was a very strict hierarchy, and at the very top was the king, the Wanax.
And the Wanax was in charge of everything.
Everything. The military, the law, the economy. This was a pure monarchy. What he said went.
And the room where it all happened was the megaron.
A megaron. That was the main hall in every palace. It was the throne room, the meeting hall, the ceremonial space, the most important room in the whole civilization.
And they all had a very specific design.
Remarkably consistent. Always a huge circular hearth, a big fire pit right in the center.
Surrounded by 4 tall columns to hold up the roof.
And a hole in the ceiling to let the smoke out. And what's really fascinating is that this design, this idea of a central space with columns, heavily influenced how later Greeks built their temples for the gods.
So they took the king's throne room and adapted it for the gods.
You got it. And the walls of the megaron would have been covered in these colorful paintings, frescoes, showing scenes of battle, hunting, nature.
All designed to show off the king's wealth and power.
Right. Which brings us back to their main focus, military strength. They were absolute masters of weapon production.
What kind of gear are we talking about?
For close combat, their main weapons were long spears and heavy bronze swords. And for defense, a typical soldier would have a large shield made of wood and animal hide.
And there were different shapes, right?
Yeah, 2 main types. One was shaped like a figure 8, and the other was a huge rectangle, like a tower, almost a walking wall.
But then you had the elite warriors.
For
The commanders.
And they got the best stuff. Heavy bronze breastplates and these incredible helmets.
The ones made with boar tusks.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The tusk helmets were, first, very strong, excellent protection. But wearing one was also a huge status symbol.
How so?
It showed everyone that you were a skilled enough hunter to have taken down a wild boar, which was a very dangerous animal. It was a sign of your personal skill and high rank.
So your helmet was also your resume.
In a way, yeah, and these elites also used chariots for moving quickly around the battlefield. When you see how many weapons are buried with them in their tombs, it's clear that being a warrior was the most respected job you could have.
Now, to support all of this, the walls, the army,
Yeah.
you have to be incredibly organized.
On an almost industrial scale, and we know they were because they were the first people on the Greek mainland to have a written language. We call it Linear B.
And they carved it into these small clay tablets. But if you were hoping for poetry or, great stories,
You'd be disappointed. What you find are lists.
just lists.
Endless lists. Lists of taxes, lists of military equipment, lists of workers. They tracked everything. Every sheep, every jar of olive oil, every bushel of grain.
So they were basically master accountants. What does that tell us?
It tells us the government was incredibly centralized. The palace wasn't just a home, it was the treasury, the warehouse, the central database for the entire kingdom. The Wanax knew exactly what he had and where it was.
And that wealth wasn't all from farming. They were big on trade.
Very active traders. They had wooden ships sailing all over the Mediterranean.
What were they selling?
Mostly finished goods, high-quality olive oil, wine, and their painted pottery was very popular.
And what were they importing? What did they need?
Raw materials. This was crucial for their military. They needed copper, tin, and ivory.
Copper and tin to make bronze.
Exactly. Without those imports, you can't make swords, you can't make armor. Their entire military machine depended on that trade.
And their trade network went pretty far.
Incredibly far. We know they were trading with Egypt, with Cyprus, all the way to Italy. It brought them wealth and new ideas.
Okay, so just to recap the social order.
Yeah.
You have the Wanax king at the top.
Right. Then your military commanders, priests and priestesses, then craftsmen and farmers, and finally, slaves at the bottom.
And that hierarchy was really clear in how they buried their leaders.
Absolutely.
No.
The early rulers were buried in these deep pits called shaft graves, right inside the city walls.
But later on, they built something even more impressive.
The Thalos tombs.
The beehive tombs.
Yes. Just incredible structures. They were built by layering stones in a circle, moving them slightly inward with each layer until they met at the top in a perfect dome. Monumental engineering, all for the dead.
And archaeologists found them full of treasure.
Gold masks, beautiful jewelry, bronze weapons. It just shows the immense respect they had for their leaders even after death.
And what about their religion? What did they believe?
They were polytheistic, so they worshipped many gods and goddesses. And what's interesting is some of the names are very similar to the later Greek gods we know from the myths.
And their rituals were about keeping the gods happy.
Pretty much. Animal sacrifices, giving offerings. Priests and priestesses would use special vessels called rituns to pour out liquid offerings.
And the core belief was just that the gods controlled everything.
Everything. The weather, the harvest, the sea, and most importantly, the outcome of battles.
Which leads us to the great mystery. We have this super organized, militarily dominant civilization. And then around 1200 BC, it just disappears. It collapses rapidly. These great fortified palaces are burned or abandoned, many of them at around the same time.
It's a huge paradox, isn't it? A
Yeah.
society built for protection that fails so completely.
And historians still don't agree on one single cause. It's part of a wider event we call the Bronze Age collapse.
So what are the leading theories? Why did those 20-foot thick walls fail?
Well, there are three main ideas, and it was probably a combination of them. The first is internal conflict,
They turn on each other.
potentially. These powerful city-states, using their military might against each other, could have weakened the entire region and made them vulnerable.
Okay, what's theory number 2?
Outside invaders. This was a time of great turmoil in the Mediterranean. You have groups sometimes called the Sea Peoples attacking coastal cities, disrupting those vital trade routes.
And if you can't get your copper and tin,
Your bronze-based military grinds to a halt.
makes sense. And the last theory, natural disasters. The region is prone to earthquakes, and there's evidence for a series of major quakes around this time. On top of that, there's also evidence for a long, severe drought.
which would have destroyed the food supply.
And when the central palace can't feed people anymore, even the best organized government loses control very quickly.
So whether it was war or invaders or disaster, the result was the same.
A total collapse. The end of the Bronze Age in Greece. And crucially, the knowledge of writing Linear B was completely lost for centuries. This began what we call the Greek Dark Ages.
But they did leave an incredible legacy. These massive stone structures, the first real state on the Greek mainland, and the roots of later Greek religion and architecture.
It's just an amazing historical lesson. A culture so advanced, so organized, so focused on defense with these immense walls could vanish so completely.
All that power couldn't save them.
Right. Their fortress walls couldn't protect them from the forces of history.
So here's something to think about. If all their perfect records, all those linear B lists of sheep and oil, couldn't prevent their collapse, what good is perfect organization when you're faced with a true catastrophe?
Something for you to consider.
See you next time.